All right, today we're going to talk about an idea that completely turned the world of manufacturing on its head. It's this concept that quality isn't just about passing or failing. It's about the hidden costs we all end up paying for things that are just good enough. We're diving into the Taguchi loss function.
So, let me just start by asking you a question. Imagine a product that just scrapes by. It meets the absolute bare minimum standard to pass inspection. Is that product really good? Or is there some kind of hidden cost when something is just on the edge of being okay? Well, that very question would go on to challenge decades of thinking. For the longest time, the answer to that question was actually pretty simple, and it led to what we can now call the good enough fallacy. So let's unpack this older, more traditional way of looking at things. You see, the old school approach was super black and white. Your product was either inside the required specifications or it was outside. If it was in, it passed. It was a good part. If it was out, it failed. End of story. There was no gray area, no in between. This is what people call the goalpost approach. And it makes sense, right? As long as a football goes between the uprights, it's a field goal. It doesn't matter if it's dead center or if it just barely skims past the post. It's all the same score. In manufacturing, a part that was right on the edge was seen as just as good as one that was perfectly in the center. So under this traditional view, there's absolutely no penalty for variation as long as you stay between the lines. It basically assumes that the customer either won't notice or simply won't care if a product is made perfectly or just acceptably. But as we're about to see, this way of thinking has a massive flaw. And this is where Dr. Junichi Taguchi steps onto the scene. He looked at this whole good enough model and came up with a completely radical and, frankly, a much more realistic definition of what quality actually is. Now just listen to this perspective shift. Taguchi argued that quality isn't defined by some arbitrary lines drawn by a factory. No. He said quality is defined by the loss a product causes to society after it's sold. And that loss includes everything from customer dissatisfaction and repair costs, all the way to the damage done to a company's reputation. This is his famous loss function. And you can see right away, it's not a set of goalposts, it's a curve. What it's telling us is incredibly powerful. The very moment a product's performance moves away from that ideal target, that center line, a loss starts to happen. And the further away you get, the greater that financial loss becomes. It's not a cliff, it's a slope. So let's put these two views right next to each other. The goalpost approach, it's binary, good or bad. It's all about just meeting the minimum. Taguchi's approach, though, is continuous. It argues that any deviation, no matter how small, has a cost. The real goal isn't just to be in spec, it's to be consistently on target, hitting the bullseye every single time. Now, here's the really cool part. Taguchi didn't just give us a concept, he gave us a way to actually calculate this loss. So let's take a look at the simple but incredibly powerful formula behind all of this. And there it is. L equals K times the quantity of Y minus tau squared. Now, I know it might look a little intimidating with all the Greek letters, but it's actually incredibly elegant. Let's break down what each part really means. First up, we have L. That stands for the loss. And we're not talking about some abstract idea here. We are talking about cold, hard cash. This is the real financial cost of scrap material, rework, warranty claims, and even just customer frustration when a product isn't quite perfect. Next, we've got the part in the parentheses, Y minus tau. This whole thing just represents the deviation from the target. Y is what you actually measured, the thickness, the voltage, whatever it happens to be. And tau is that perfect ideal value you were shooting for. The difference between them, well, that's your measure of imperfection. And finally, we have K. This little letter is kind of the secret sauce of the whole formula. It's called the quality loss coefficient, and its job is to connect that engineering measurement, that deviation, to a real dollar amount. It's the constant that translates a technical imperfection into actual financial pain. So all this theory is great, but let's see how it plays out in the real world. There's a classic story that perfectly demonstrates why ignoring this loss function can be an absolute disaster. Okay, so picture this. A company makes these big vinyl covers. They get really good at their process, reducing all the variation. Then someone makes a business decision. To save a little bit of money on raw materials, they decide to make the covers just a bit thinner. Still technically in spec, still good enough to pass. But those slightly thinner covers were also weaker. Well, farmers bought them to protect their wheat harvest. But out in the fields, under real-world stress, the covers tore.
The farmers lost their crops, and that loss created a ripple effect. Wheat prices went up for everyone. And the company? Well, their reputation was destroyed. And that is the absolute punchline of the whole story. The company followed the old goalpost rules to the letter. Their product was good enough to pass inspection, but that good enough product still created a massive financial loss for their customers, for society, and ultimately for themselves. What Taguchi's work really did was give us a new language to talk about quality, one that everyone in an entire organization, from the engineer on the floor to the CEO in the corner office, could finally understand. I absolutely love this quote because it just perfectly captures the genius of the idea. The loss function is like a translator. It takes the technical data from the engineering department, what the quote calls the language of things, and it converts it into the one language the management team understands best: money. And why is that so incredibly powerful? Because it makes quality a bottom-line financial issue, not just some technical thing to worry about. It gives companies a clear monetary reason to invest in getting better, in reducing variation, and in aiming for the target, not just staying within the lines. The whole focus shifts from catching mistakes at the end of the line to designing robust products and processes right from the very beginning.
So I'll leave you with this thought. If every small deviation from the ideal has a hidden cost attached to it, where are we all just settling for good enough? In our work or even in our lives, when we could be striving for the target? It's a powerful question, and it applies far beyond the factory floor.